hello for anyone who's out there. If you can hear me and everything's great, go ahead and give me a little thumbs up. I'm waiting for Laura to come on because we're going to talk about postgraduate life. So I'll put a little info tag down below to say what we're talking about so that you guys can submit questions. We have a couple going already, but we'll wait till Laura gets on here. Okay. Oh, thumbs up. Good. Sounds working. For those of you who don't know, I'm Shelly. I'm a current PhD student here at the University of Kent. I'm doing a PhD in the Center for Medieval and Early Modern Studies, and my focus is on early modern drama. I look at the way that folk tales were adapted for the stage, specifically to do with women and healers and stuff like that. So that's my experience. If you have questions about MEMS at Kent or about the English department, I kind of know how that goes. Oh, we just got a little thing that said that Laura couldn't join. Let me try again. All right, we'll try that again and see if she can come on. She's a master's student, so we're both going to give you different information about what it's like to be a postgrad. And it says it's connecting. There we go. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Hi. So I already gave my little introduction that I'm a PhD student and that I work on early modern drama in the Center for Medieval and Early Modern Studies. So what is your intro?
Yeah, so I'm Laura. I'm a master's student. I'm doing my master's part-time distance at the Tizard Centres, and I'm doing autism studies.
Okay. Awesome. So this is the postgraduate student life session. Again, if you have questions, you can post them in the comments below. We'll try to keep up as we're going. But let's just go ahead and start with some of the questions we already had come in. Let's do a general one. So what has life been like as a student at Kent, Laura?
Yeah, it's been really good. It's started off as distance. So I came onto campus, and then since COVID's hit, everyone's doing everything online at the moment. And there are some mixed, some on-campus learning as well. So it's been different for me because I'm working and I have a family, so I'm fitting my studies around everything else as well. So it's a little bit different for you because you're on campus, aren't you?
I'm closer to campus. I'm not on campus anymore. I used to live up at Wolf College. So if anybody has questions about the postgraduate accommodation, I know all about that. I was on some of the committees that helped do some of the upgrades and stuff, so I can answer those questions. But no, I'm actually right below campus, sort of near the city center. And I would say that student life is kind of the same for a PhD student, just because we kind of work on our own anyway. We're all research-based. It's been a little difficult to get some of the materials that we need as far as, getting up to the British Library and stuff like that. But for the most part, a lot of my texts have been at the library, and I can still go up to the Templeman and get what I need. But I have a dog. If anybody has seen the videos in the Insta stories of the dog, that's mine. That's Bilbo. And we like to go around the trails and stuff around here. So as far as outdoor activities, there's a lot to do. And speaking of activities, the next question, I'm looking at my computer screen here, is it easy to balance study and other activities, and especially with a family? What would you say?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, but you can do it. So I work and I'm studying distance, but I'm doing my master's over 2 years. So that actually helps a lot with being more flexible around a job. We also have 4 children, a dog and a cat.
4 children, wow.
So it's quite busy. I'm not the most organised person by a long stretch, but you really have to make sure you are organised. So I definitely try and make sure that I balance everything around it. So I have to fit my studies around my job and the family. So you have to be really flexible and try and keep to some structure, but don't be so hard on yourself, because sometimes you just can't keep it the way you might want it to be. Especially at the moment, because we're at home. So I have to try and find lots of times to get out of the house, because it's working from home, studying from home. So that would always be my top tip for people, is just to try and get outside. So sometimes I'll even just print off some journal articles and just go on a really long walk. And that's a bit of downtime for me as well, but I'm still getting my studies in. So sometimes you have to think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, are we still there? Oh yeah, we're still there. Yeah, how about me? The balance, I would say, so I'm in the 3rd year of my PhD, which is usually kind of the last one, and a lot of people go into a 4th year for writing up. So I would say that I have a little bit longer than just this year. So as far as balancing stuff, I wasn't as good at that for my first couple of years, definitely, because I did a lot of the like postgraduate officer roles and stuff like that. But I really made an effort this year, actually, before the whole COVID thing, to get rid of things that I didn't really need to spend time on anymore. So that's helped a lot with being able to balance the things that I need to do to finish my PhD. But then, of course, you know, like you said, get outside as much as possible. Sometimes we need a little bit of vitamin D. And I'm not very good at that because I, you know, sit at my computer all day long, especially with meetings and stuff like that. So yeah, like you said, get outside when you can, move your body as much as you can, and be organized. I know you said that organization wasn't as good for you, but I would say if you can figure out how to do it, that's definitely a way to try to balance everything. Do you have some of the questions over there with you?
Yeah, so we've got about some of the facilities on campus that help you study. So obviously I'm distant, so I don't really make the most of those. I use a lot more of the online resources. Mm. What's on campus that you would recommend and helps with studying?
The on-campus stuff. So we have the new, well, I guess it's not new anymore. It's like 3 years old now. The Postgraduate Study Hub in the Senate building. It's right next to the library, and it's 24/7. You need a postgraduate student card to get in. And that one's really great because it's a bunch of computers. It's nice and quiet. We sort of tried to keep it so that it was for that quiet study time. And then we also have the new refurbished postgraduate sort of like hangout room, common room in the Wolf Complex. So I know that people have enjoyed doing that. Just sort of that's like the social area. There's a pool table and like a little kitchen and a big TV. I've been to the library a few times, and they've done a good job of kind of getting that to a one-way system, which is kind of tough sometimes because like I'll know where the book is that I need, but I have to go all the way around the library to get it. I guess that gets the activity in. But I'm curious to know about some of the distance stuff that you've used, because I should probably use a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really helped because since the move to online learning and a lot of increased online learning, a lot of the resources that weren't available and now everyone's had to push online. So there's definitely a lot more resources there. So student advisory, learning advisory service, there's some really great online tips around there around that time management, critical thinking and writing, time management, all those things that are really important, especially at a postgraduate level. The library as well, there are so many e-resources, so I find that really useful because I do come down onto campus and do get some books out every so often because I do love the campus as well. But the fact that I can just go online and find ebooks, journals, and contact the subject librarians really easily. So if there's something I'm struggling on, the fact that I'm so far away doesn't really make much of a difference because you can just send them an email and they really help with that as well. But I know you've mentioned some of the workshops as well before that you found really useful.
Yeah, so the researcher and graduate college, they just changed the name. It used to be called the Graduate School, but now it's the Researchers and Graduates College. They have a lot of online workshops, and I've done several of them actually since they've gone online. The ones in person are fun too when they can get back to that. But the online ones are great. They do specific ones for PhD students and then for postgraduates in general or MA students. And they do a lot of the sort of time management, how to avoid procrastination. I think a lot of us admitted that we went to that workshop to procrastinate, but it was helpful. And then I did a couple of really great ones about imposter syndrome as PhD students and sort of managing that mindset aspect of the process. And those were really, really helpful. I really liked those.
Yeah, no, they sound really good. I'm definitely going to sign up for some of those.
Yeah, they're great. They also do the one-on-one academic coaching through them, and that's fabulous because you just can get on Zoom and talk about your project, and it's good to have an outside opinion on what you're doing. And I think that Jo Collins is still the one doing those. She's incredible. She can help anything that you need to talk about. Like, she's ready to sort of get into where you need to go academically, which is great.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, as a postgraduate as well, that ability to talk to somebody and talk it through, especially people who don't necessarily know your subject, can actually really help you formulate your ideas and get yourself back on plan. So that's really good.
Yeah, she's fabulous. Yeah.
So we've got some more questions. So what's your typical day or week like?
Well, do you want like the ideal one or what actually happens? Maybe both. So my ideal day is sort of getting up in the morning, and I get up rather early. My friends make fun of me. I'm a really early riser. And sort of doing like my admin stuff and getting my to-do list together. And then I try to schedule 3 different writing, researching chunks throughout the day, getting up in between and like taking the dog out or, you know, doing the washing up or whatever. What actually tends to happen is that you get into like that reaction mode and you're like answering emails and stuff like that. So that's been challenging, especially when you don't have somewhere else to go to work and you have to work from home, putting together that schedule and trying to stick to it. But as a researcher, I would say for the most part, my average day looks like, you know, finding resources, doing the reading, trying to get the academic writing done, but then doing like free writes and stuff if that academic thing isn't coming. So yeah, that's about it. And getting up as much as possible and doing other stuff. How about you?
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a typical day. It really does sort of depend on what I've got on. So I try to get up quite early, and so before the children wake up, when it's quite peaceful, try and get a little bit of reading, even if it's answering emails, doing a little bit of reading. Sometimes I just watch a chunk of a lecture before I then have to sort of get the kids ready and then go to work. And then sometimes when I come home, I'll then do another chunk. So I do tend to try and get one day a week where I really try and have that specific time that I dedicate, where I will do jobs that take a little bit more of my brain power. So that I really need to concentrate. But again, there's no typical day. It is really about being flexible and fitting chunks in, and working it around. But yeah, definitely that's where your organisation really has to come into play.
Yeah. So
yeah.
as a distance student, you don't have certain times that you have to be online, right? You can watch the lectures when you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. So we do have sort of quite regular Zoom workshops, which we do have to schedule. They usually give us quite a few different times. The university is really flexible. I think a lot of students who take part-time or distance masters tend to have sort of other commitments like work. So the university really support and recognise that. So there's usually options, and I program them into my work calendar into advance, so I can't get double booked.
Yeah.
So I will do, and the lectures, they come online with all the resources, and then I can just watch them when I have time, which for me just makes my life so much easier, because I can do that in the evening, once the kids are in bed or at the weekend, and I then feel definitely I've got much more control over my own learning.
Yeah.
But then you still get those face-to-face, albeit virtually, Zoom workshops, and still got that interaction, you still get to speak to people, so it's a really good combination.
Yeah. So I don't have classes as a PhD student because I research and write on my own, but we do have in my center, and I know that a lot of the other centers and departments on campus do it, like a weekly sort of seminar where people can meet and talk about sort of research that's happening or invite guest lecturers. But I know that other like on campus master's students have their timed, you know, they have to be like in their Zoom or Teams call at certain times kind of thing. So
Yeah.
It's a little different for everybody.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what sort of, because there's so many different types of postgraduate courses, whether it's, you know, diploma or part-time masters, whether it's taught or research. So it definitely is flexible. So it's worth, I think when I was applying though, I was really clear. I had to know what I was expected, because I knew I was managing so many things, and I did know in advance how much commitment I would have to do face-to-face and those aspects.
Yeah. Just, he's left me alone now. I was going to say that the dog, he's looking for his SNACK. Did I say that right? So he might start bugging me, but so the class situation I think is different for everybody, but we'll have to maybe get someone on sometime who's doing those in-person classes and see what it's like as far as how many times a day they have to be in the Zoom classes and stuff. And if anyone's on right now, if you want to comment what that's like, that would be interesting to know, because when I was doing my master's at Kent, of course, you know, we were going in person, so I would be curious to know. Let's see what other questions we have here. So one of them is, well, we can talk about sort of the academic support. We talked a little bit about the researcher in graduate college. What about stuff like outside of academics? Have you taken advantage of any of the well-being stuff?
Yeah, so the wellbeing services are really fantastic. I think that's really good to be able to reach out and speak to people as well when you're studying, especially when we've got times at the moment we're in where it is quite stressful. So I found wellbeing support services are really approachable, and you can speak to them, and they have a range of services for all students, whether you're distance or on campus. There's even things like the sports centre. They've got all their sort of workouts online now as well, and you can attend classes digitally, which I've really found useful as well as something different, especially when I'm housebound at the moment with so those sort of things. There are definitely more resources around campus. It's not just from your department.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think the ones that I've taken advantage of have been really helpful, especially when it comes to sort of that well-being and like specialized stuff. So I have an ILP, so an individual learning plan, because I have ADHD and some dyslexia and like a lot of this sort of like specific learning disorder aspects. They have amazing support for that. Like I've never had that at any other university or program that I've done. And one of them is, and they actually put in like the request for funding and stuff for me, that I get to have a once a week meeting with like a specialist sort of tutor where I can talk through ideas and talk about scheduling and my writing and stuff like that. And that has been incredible. And just like, someone to sort of meet with every week and talk academically has been amazing. So if there's any of that you're interested in, it's definitely helpful to see what they have offered. And then the medical center, especially for an international student, you can go there for your primary care. And I just called them this morning, and they're really helpful. They can just tell you where to go and what to do. And I haven't had any sort of issues or hiccups with navigating the system. It's been really good.
Yeah, and I think if you go onto the website as well, there's so much information on there about what services are there. They have a lot of it detailed on there. So if you wanted to have a look about the around the well-being and the library, all that, it is sort of documented really well on the website.
Yeah, and they're good about, if you call them, there's always like an actual person there to talk to you, which is really helpful. Yeah, you can just give them a call. Do you have any other questions over there?
Let's have a look. What else we've got? What's the difference between PG study and compared to PG study? So I could talk about that, and then maybe you could talk about what's the difference between masters and PhD.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So for me, postgraduate study, it is really different to undergraduate. I feel like you've got a lot more flexibility. You've got, first of all, like when you're doing an undergraduate, you tend to be doing quite a lot of different subjects, a lot of different aspects under your degree, whereas postgraduate tends to be a bit more specific. So for me, that was really important, that it was something I was really interested in. So it's much more focused. And also I feel like you get into so much more detail and you learn different skills. So when you're undergraduate, you're guided a lot more, but when you get to postgraduate, you're then getting to become more your own, and you're developing those skills much further.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think obviously it's much more concentrated. So usually a master's would be a year. I'm doing mine for 2 years because obviously I'm working as well. So it's much more intense and focused. So definitely pick something you're really interested in, because for me as well, that's really helped, because as corny as it sounds, I'm really interested in what I do. So sometimes I get my downtime and my relaxation time from reading around my own subject, because for me, I really enjoy it. So
that's good though.
Yeah, definitely. Whereas if it was something that maybe I wasn't as interested in, I would maybe find that harder. What about you?
Yeah, so going from the master's to the PhD, so I did it right back to back. So I did the master's in medieval and early modern studies at Kent before I went straight into the PhD. And like you said, there's the master's aspect of it. It's postgrad in general is a lot more specific and it's more hands-on. You kind of take control of your own learning and your own project. But during the master's program, there was a lot of like really hands-on, like learning different techniques for the research that I would have to do later. So we did like paleography classes, which are how to read the really, really old like books, the ones from like the 12 and 1300s. And we also did like Latin and stuff like that. So they were really sort of intense exercise and practical based things. So going from that into the PhD, which is like you're on your own now, you are an independent researcher, that is quite the transition. And I know that a lot of people have trouble with that. I think it probably took me a good year and a half to like feel settled into kind of being semi-comfortable with what I'm doing. But yeah, you have to sort of go out and find your own things and write about your own things. And of course your supervisor is there to support you and give you guidance and direction. But for the most part, you're in charge of your schedule and you're in charge of your output. And yeah, it's a big transition. So people who are considering that, make sure that you understand the transition there. And of course that there are people to help, and all the other PhD students are helpful in, giving their advice and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you find that though, going from, because even though I do have flexibility, I have structure, how do you find that now? Be sort of much more, do you find it harder to be organized, or do you have to really try to be?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I think that it's difficult to get organized. just because when you have so much free time, it's really easy to be like, you know what, I have like all day or I have all week, like I'll just do it later. And you really have to learn that like doing it later is not the right thing to do because you probably won't do it later. So yeah, I think any system that you can put in place that helps you to stay on track. So whether that's like meeting with a friend at a certain time every day, or, you know, doing a co-working hour, that can be helpful. But I think that there's a lot of trial and error for sure in your first year or so, figuring out how to structure things for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely found, even as postgraduate, like I found at the beginning, I was just reading everything and making notes on everything. And I really had to relearn how to study.
Yeah.
So I really made the use of some of the note-taking classes just to try and give myself, because it is every time you move up, you're having to learn new skills, let alone just your subject. It's about learning the different ways to study.
Yeah, definitely.
And like you say, you've got the time, you can readjust and move forward and still do a really good job. It just, you have to reflect sometimes. I think maybe I didn't do that the right way.
Yeah. And you took some
Yeah.
time out, like between your undergrad and master's, right? So you were,
Yeah.
well, I mean, you're still in the working world. So you have
Really long time for, I think it's like 10 years. So but my job is at university. So I was still around that bit for academic writing. I was really, really nervous.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, I took advantage of a lot of the support that was offered at Kent around academic writing, about organisation. And definitely, I think a lot of it sometimes is just making sure that you're confident in yourself and rebuilding some confidence in yourself, because especially if you've took time out or you're moving up to a new level, you kind of think, I've mastered that, I've got that. And then you go to, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I felt the same because I took time out too. I didn't do my master's until I was like 30. So for me, I was teaching and stuff before that. So I was like still, like you said, in that academic environment, but I was teaching 16-year-olds. So it's a really different sort of like style of learning and style of writing. And I think one of the hardest things for me going back into like structured academic work as a master's student was remembering that when you come home at the end of the day, there's still stuff to do. Because like I think when you're like working, you know, you can leave it at your office and you come home and live your life. But as a student, it's like, oh, I have like coursework to do and like papers to write. So that can be a bit of a transition too.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is a massive difference between undergraduate and postgraduate.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see what else we have here. We talked a little bit about what student life was like with COVID. Have you taken advantage of any of the sort of like social things that have been going on for postgraduate students?
Do you know what? I haven't really, because I don't have time a lot of the time to get involved with that. When I came down for the workshops at the beginning, because you do come down a couple of times a year, before COVID anyway, it was nice to socialise with other students and speak to those. But I think just due to the nature of everything else that's going on for me. But how about you? How have you found the social side of it?
It's been really different for sure, because like I said, before this year, I spent 3 years as one of the postgraduate officers at the KGSA, the Kent Graduate Student Association. And a couple years of that, I was the president. So we did a bunch of event planning that was just for postgrads. So all like the postgrad welcome week things and sort of like monthly events and holidays. This time, usually we would be doing like a big Thanksgiving dinner for everyone. Which is really sad, because the last time that we did one of those, we got to have it in the Darwin Conference Suites, and it was like all catered, and we only charged postgrads £1 to come for like this big 3-course meal, and that was just to sort of make sure that people who had signed up were coming, so that we had the right amount of food. So yeah, it's been really different not to have that aspect of it, but I know that there have been a lot of different sort of like creative things that people have put together to socialize and get to know people. A lot of the like the Mature Student Association, I think it's Mature, Part-Time, and Commuter. They have like a regular sort of like meetup hour that they do on Teams or on Zoom. So people take advantage of that, and they meet a lot of people. Let's see, we have a question that's just come in that says, I live in London. Let me see if I can go back. I live in London, but I travel into Medway. Can I live in London but travel into Medway? Yeah, absolutely. I know faculty members and staff members who do that. I don't know any specific students who travel from London into Medway, but I know students who travel from Medway to Canterbury. So I know the train system is really good. You can go straight from London to the area of the Medway campuses. So yeah, you can definitely travel from London into Medway. Does that answer your question? Yeah, if you guys have any more questions, we have just a couple minutes left. So if you want to pop them down in the comments, we can answer those. And I'm just going to answer one more that I think we might have skipped over, and that was the accommodation one. So the accommodation for postgraduates is at Wolf College. So they did a really, really good job of making sure that the postgrads were in a separate area of campus from the undergrads. Because I know that for a lot of people, once you get into that postgrad way of sort of living and working, you want to be in a postgrad section because you're not really doing a lot of the undergrad things anymore. So I lived there for a year in Wolf College, and it was great. You meet a lot of people. You don't necessarily live in the same flats as the people in your course. So you get to meet people who are outside of your course, and that's really helpful for your social life and stuff like that. But the way that it works is, for the most part, you live in a flat where you have a room of your own and a bathroom of your own, and then you and your flatmates share a kitchen. So sometimes that's 4, 6, or 8 people sharing a kitchen, and then there are other ones in Wolf College where they're self-catered to the point where you have your own kitchen inside your suite. So it just depends on what you're looking for and how you want to live. But the Wolf complex is really fun. That's where that new refurbished Wolf Common Room is. And there's a cat there. If you've seen any of the pictures of Gandalf, the cat, he's sort of like this little deified creature that we have a Facebook page for him. I started a Facebook page for him, I think 3 years ago or so. So it's really fun for people to put their pictures of him in and talk about like what he's doing during the day. But he just sort of like lazes around and like asks for food. And it's just a fun place to be, especially in the summer. We got tennis tables, table tennis tables installed, and there are like some games and stuff that people bring out. So it's a fun place to be, especially for an international student where you're coming in not knowing anyone and not knowing the area, or maybe even not knowing the culture. It's good to be in one place where everything's taken care of and you're right on campus. Yeah, so I don't think we have any other questions coming in, but this isn't the only postgrad session we're going to do. So Laura, do you remember how often that we said, like maybe once a month or so we'll do a postgrad one? I'm not really sure. Yeah?
Yeah, I think it was a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have any other postgrad questions, if you're watching this after the live feed, you can message this account in the DMs or put a comment below this video, and we'll try to work those questions into the next one. Do you have anything else in the last like minute or so that we have, Laura?
No, I think we've covered quite a lot, really, haven't we? I thought we usually put a little promo on anyway on the stories to say we'll be doing it. So just keep watching that, and you'll see that we'll usually give you a few days notice for when we put our next one on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's been fun. It was fun to like see another person and have a conversation. We're so isolated. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in. Anyone else who was here. Yeah, and if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments or DM this account and we'll work them in for the next one. All right? Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.